Hi everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I am bringing you my 2022 reading. What is this? It's not a full-blown wrap-up. Is it an overview? A look at my 2022 books? I don't know. I'm including all of the things, right? I have said many times before in my recent videos that last year's reading was not a great one for me personally, and I read a total of 39 books in the entire year. I had a super huge slump. My mental health was in the tank. Like, I literally didn't even want to read just one more book to get to around 40. Like, I just didn't want to. But through all of that, there are some definite winners that I have to talk about. Because there's not a large enough amount of books to talk about my least favorite, I'm just going to include that in this one too. So this is literally going to include all of the things. Best, worst, most surprising. Typically the end of the year videos that I like to make. So why don't we just like rip off the band-aid and talk about the ones that I didn't like first? The one true DNF of last year, which was a really huge surprise to me that I DNF'd this book. It was a huge surprise to me that I was disappointed as much as I was in this book, and that is Children of Time, written by Adrian Tchaikovsky. What a shame. What a shame. I think this book was on one of my 5-star TBR predictions videos. Like, I think I had that much faith in it going into reading it, and lo and behold, it wasn't a book that I was particularly enjoying. It's a science fiction novel, and it's one of those first contact with alien stories, but really, like, we have a ship of explorers and people who are trying to colonize planets. This one in particular gets inhabited, but not by the species that you think it's going to be inhabited by. And then we have multiple different time jumps throughout the very short amount of time I ended up reading it, where there's like a research ship that's flying out that way. By the time I stopped reading it, we were like building up to a conflict of the superpower on the planet and the crew of the spaceship. Now, I might be mixing, I think I'm going to be mixing up my my science fiction novels here. So I don't think this is one of those instances where the ship ends up like taking over for the crew. I think the crew is very much in power of this ship, but we're just like building up all these conflicts between the people on the ship and then the inhabitants of this planet. What really kept getting on my nerves were the time jumps. And I'm really not someone who is bothered by large swaths of time being covered in a book. That typically isn't a thing with me, but for this particular book, it was like I would get invested in characters and then 100 years would pass. And then I was like, all right, okay. So I'm starting over again with a new set of characters and a new bit of action, but with the memories of the previous 100 years, and then there would be a time jump. And it just kept doing this. And I was like, I have yet to like settle in to this book. I have yet to settle into my feelings. So I DNF'd it. I couldn't do it. And it really disappoints me because I just was looking forward to this kind of first contact with alien story, plus the creatures on the planet that everybody was talking about. If you know, you know. I thought I was gonna love this book, and I don't even have my physical copy of it. I used to own it physically, but I don't even think it lasted my move. Like, I've been in my new house for a year now. I don't even think I brought it to my new house because I was just like, we're done with you. The other DNF, let's just get straight into it because this one I have less feelings about. Well, maybe not less feelings about, but like no part of me is indecisive about DNFing this book. And that is House of Sky and Breath, written by Sarah J. Maas. This is book 2 in her Crescent City series. And trust me, I know what happens at the end because like once all the spoilers came out and the idea that Sarah J. Maas was now going to be doing this multiverse sort of situation I had to go and read the last chapter. So I did, right? Okay, without any context. But I think I DNF'd this book maybe 30% of the way through. I always want more from Sarah J. Maas, and I never get it. And this was another example of this not like other girls main character, and then her swoony love interest, another fated mates. I'm like fated mated out. Like, I don't even think I could pick up another book that deals with fated mates because of the way that Sarah J. Maas handles fated mates. And the steamy scenes weren't even that great, which is what kind of prompted me into like reading actual romance authors, which is how we got into this romance era of mine. There were just so many disappointing things. I wanted so much more of this book, and I was reading it and I was like, I don't even think I know what the point is right now. I don't even think I know like why Bryce is doing the things that she's doing. Like, why am I gonna read a 800 page book to like have the plot be so low on the list of priorities for this book? Does that make sense? Like, Sarah J. Maas, as her books have come out more recently, I personally don't think she's gotten any better than she did with Throne of Glass. I'm still on book number 5. Like, I haven't even picked up the most recent Throne of Glass book, or like the ending of the Throne of Glass series. I haven't even picked up any of the newest ones in the Court of Thorns and Roses. And like, even though the epilogue and the ending to this book harkens to this multiverse idea, am I a glutton for punishment? I don't know. Do I want to, because of FOMO, try and catch up and be a part of the fervor that is a new Sarah J. Maas release? Or do I just like call it good? I am not sure. So this book came out last year, I think. And once again, it's like beautiful cover, beautiful hardback, like no regrets about owning it. But it came out last year, and so everybody was reading it last year. So if you were one of those people who picked up this book and felt those same sort of tepid emotions that I did, can you please let me know? Like, are there groups of people like me who are like, oh, is this multiverse concept enough to keep me going with her? Or is it Sarah J. Maas just cashing in on her more successful series because those are the favorites? So I don't know. Anyway, that was my other DNF of the year. Then some disappointing books. So when I began to get involved with fantasy romance, I ended up picking up like the most popular series that was like on everybody's on everybody's list last year. So that is From Blood and Ash, written by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I did finish From Blood and Ash, and I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars. And then I started Kingdom of Fire. I can't say whether or not I'm going to finish it, because this wasn't like a purposeful DNF. This was one of those where my idea of no TBRs for 2023 and mood reading for 2023 kind of came into play. So this is like one that I've just kind of like put down for now. I don't know if it's a DNF. I just was like not feeling it. This first book had me very excited because I was like, oh, this is going to be a great fantasy romance. We have a world that is basically run by vampires and werewolves. There's just like no beating around the bush. Jennifer L. Armentrout tries to disguise the language, and I was like, you know, it's been a while since I've had like a vampire novel. Maybe this will be the one to like bring me back into the fold. Well, it was a very exciting read. You know, we have this one woman who is like kind of meant to remain pure so that way she can sacrifice herself to the gods. She was chosen a long time ago as like this only female person who is worthy to ascend, you know, to the gods, basically. And she's being kept pure. She has to be watched over. Nobody can look upon her face. And I did enjoy that. And I liked the closeness she felt with the close circle that she had around her. I even liked the romantic plot until the very end. And then we basically start immediately after the events of this book and this book. and the direction that the romance went, I was like, I don't buy that for a second. So what started off like a decent 4-star, I'm questioning whether or not I want to continue on with Jennifer L. Armentrout. And I feel like I've seen that kind of reaction before from other booktubers who started on this series as well. So if you have any thoughts again about, you know, From Blood and Ash, Jennifer L. Armentrout, let me know in the comment section below. So now that we've kind of gotten over like the negative Nancys of the bunch, I want to talk about just some honorable mentions, ones that weren't 5-star reads but still hold a really good place in my heart for the feelings that I have for them after last year's terrible reading year. So these ones are honorable mentions, not quite 5 stars, but really, really, really great reads of the year. So the first one that I want to mention is actually the graphic novel series. So I picked up all 4 volumes of Heartstopper. So this, for those of you who may not know, this is a graphic novel series about 2 young teenage boys in school still, and it's a cute little coming out story. And, you know, we've got one who develops a crush on the other, and why are they one of the strongest couples I've ever read about? You know, like, it's just a cute coming out story. It deals with a lot of, like, family emotions, and for as bleak as some of last year was for me, because I was dealing with a lot of family loss, this whole graphic novel series really was just like that warm Sunday with a cherry on top kind of feeling. And it was just really nice to have something positive to read about and something to look forward to. Then the other 2 honorable mentions are both from Stephen King. Now, because of how few books I read last year, Stephen King won as the most read author of last year. I read 6 Stephen King books in total. These 2, again, were not quite 5 stars, but beautiful books. I really enjoyed them. So the first one is The Long Walk. This is one of the novels that he wrote under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. It's about a young man who enters into this annual long walk contest where basically it's just a bunch of boys walking until there's only one left. And there are rules in place for how long you can stop. There's rules in place for, you know, how many warnings you can get. But the whole point of you entering this contest is to be the last one standing. And it was extremely emotional. There was a lot of introspection here because, I mean, what else are they doing but walking, right? But there was a lot to say about, like, how far you're willing to go and kind of digging within the depths of yourself and whether or not it's worth it in the end. And it was really great. I have had a lot of people also say this is one of their top Stephen King novels to me. Like, when I finished this book, I had some comments on my Goodreads, and because I was still active on Goodreads, even if I wasn't posting videos, but I had some people comment to me saying that, like, oh, I'm so glad you love that one because it's one of my favorites. And yeah, it's one of my favorites as well. The other one, I would say this wins the award for the most surprising book of the year for me, and that is Duma Key. This is, I feel like, a book of Stephen King's that kind of flies under the radar. And it definitely, I don't think it's for everyone in terms of, like, whether or not you're gonna enjoy it as much as I did. It's about a man who used to work in construction. He got into a terrible accident, and then his whole life just kind of gets turned upside down. He encounters money troubles because of the accident, he encounters marital problems, and he ends up getting a divorce. So then he basically moves from Minnesota to Florida, and he decides to get away from it all and rent a house in this Florida Key. And then he takes up painting and drawing, and of course there's a bit of a supernatural element to it because it's a Stephen King novel. But wow, the bulk of this book was just like a book about forgiveness, a book about having triumphant moments when your life might feel like it's down and out, and there's some generational tales that kind of happen along with the mystery of this Duma Key in the Florida Keys, and I really enjoyed it. Such a great read. I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. So I had to mention it in my 2022 wrap up by just how surprisingly how much I enjoyed it. Of course, it was a book that I picked up a long time ago because I thought I would enjoy it. I'm just really glad that it paid off. All right, and now we are here to my favorite books of the year. The first one is The House in the Cerulean Sea, written by T.J. Klune. Talk about another, like, light in the darkness that was 2022. I saw that this one was available on Scribd, and I knew that it was, like, insanely popular. So many people had so many great things to say about it. So I was like, all right, I'll give that one a chance. Oh my gosh. I want to read the next ones. I just haven't gotten around to it. It was amazing. It was the definition of cozy fantasy. This auditor coming to audit this orphanage for children who are not necessarily children. And the idea of this world of order versus this world of chaos, and how do we interact with each? It was amazing. It was really good. This one hit me right in the spot that I wanted A Psalm for the Wild Built to hit me. It just came out of left field because I didn't have a physical copy of it. It wasn't something that I was like intentionally seeking out to read. It just popped up and I was like, let's give it a shot. Oh, I'm so glad I did. 5 out of 5 stars. The other one was an audiobook that I saw and I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to give this one a shot too. And I listened to 3 total memoirs in 2022. And this was the best. I mean, I also read the Elton John one, which was just fun and amazing. But this one, as far as like evoking powerful emotions out of me, it was top tier. It was Know My Name by Chanel Miller. For those of you who may not know her name, but know of the story of the Stanford, pardon my language, I actually don't call him by his name, but I will for the sake of this video. It's Brock Turner, or as I call him, Fuckface. It's the story of the Stanford rapist and the girl coming forward with her story. Her name is Chanel Miller, and I remember when her victim impact statement was published, I read it immediately, and I was incredibly moved and so proud of a person that I had never met before. And the same goes for her memoir. Once again, for a person that I don't know on the street, like I wouldn't even be able to point her out on the street, but knowing her story so intimately, and I just applaud her bravery, and I was so proud of her. Like, that's just such a silly thing to say about someone that you don't know, but like, reading about her experience and processing her experience and the impact that it had on her life thereafter, as well as her moving through the justice system in the United States. Brock Turner is not behind bars. Like, that's how messed up the US justice system is. He's not even behind bars. Yes, we got a win that he's going to be listed as a sex offender for the rest of his life. Her grace under fire was so commendable, so great. If you feel like you can handle the content of her memoir, I highly recommend it. It is definitely one worth checking out. Of course, it deals with the topic of rape and the aftermath and her survivor story. Now let's move on to a lighter topic. I think this was the first book that I finished in 2022. In an Absent Dream, written by Seanan McGuire. This is book number 4 of the Wayward Children series. I don't think I have all of them. It's up on one of my shelves up there that you can't see, so therefore I can't see it right now. I think I have the 7 that are out. I don't think I have 8. So I have to continue on with this series, but I don't know how I'm going to top this one. This one, as soon as I finished, I literally put my hands and wept. I literally put my head in my hands and I wept. It was so beautiful. It was so good. And it was like painful. It was painfully beautiful. So this follows a young woman who goes through her door and finds herself in the Goblin Market. So it's Shannon Maguire's take on the Goblin Market and how like everything has a price. You have to be very specific with what you're bargaining with. And so understanding the consequences of your bargains, and like essentially in this Goblin Market, you get free reign as a child, but once you become an adult, like the consequences are that much greater for the bargains that you end up making. And it was so good. This was a 5 out of 5 star read, and not every single book in the Wayward Children series has done that to me. So I'm like really nervous to continue on with the series because I'm like, how can you top this one? I don't know. Billy Summers, 5 out of 5 star read. This was a more recent release of Stephen King, so it was one that intrigued me, but I'm so glad that it stuck with me for a long time. I originally rated it as a 4-star read, but then as I thought about it longer and longer and realized that it still hadn't left my mind for a while, then I bumped it up to a 5. This follows a retired military personnel, Billy Summers, and he becomes a marksman for hire, and this is the story of like his final job. Like he wants to be done, he wants to get out. And it's very action-packed, but also not. Like, it's very much a Stephen King kind of novel where it's like, you've got slow, introspective character parts, but then you have a really bang-out action sequence as well. So I feel like this one just combined the best of everything that Stephen King has to offer in one of his newer releases, and I can see why a lot of people have really enjoyed this one from him. And then the other 5-star Stephen King was End of Watch, the last book in the Mr. Mercedes Bill Hodges trilogy. So End of Watch is the final installment in the Bill Hodges trilogy that starts with Mr. Mercedes, then we have Finders Keepers, and then we have this one. This was such an ending. This was such an ending, a perfect ending, a perfect end to fit these characters and the journey that we went on in those 3 books. And this was the only one of the trilogy that I ended up giving 5 stars because I think that he, like Stephen King, stayed completely true to the characters to the very, very end of this book, and it was wonderful to watch. Like, this is the kind of story that Stephen King flat out tells you the ending from page 1, and you just have to watch to see how it's going to play out. So, of course, we follow Bill Hodges. He is a retired police detective in the city of Chicago, and he has started up his own detective agency, and this is the last hurrah of the trilogy. So I loved it. And it was me finishing End of Watch that spurred on me reading some of the newer Stephen King books that didn't make it into this video because of one of the characters that we follow along in this book. Now, I was looking at Stephen King books that I don't own yet, and I just realized there's a short story collection out there that also contains the same character, and one of his newest releases, I think it's coming out this year, also follows that character. So obviously I'm gonna have to pick that up. Okay, and then this book I have already reviewed or wrapped up on my channel this year. This is The Blade Itself, written by Joe Abercrombie, book number 1 of the First Law trilogy. So I had made like a personal reading goal of mine to read the First Law trilogy last year before things went crazy. And then I was in the middle of a live show for the Elderling Along for finishing up the Realm of the Elderlings, and we were talking about what we're going to read for our next series for the Catch Up Book Club, and they said, oh, we're going to be reading First Law, and I was like, crap, I literally just finished book number 1 and I'm currently listening to book number 2. I had made it very, very, like, 10% of the way through book number 2. So once I found that out, I was like, I'll stop. Like, let me pause, let me stop, so that way I can actually, like, read the book in real time with you. So that's what I ended up doing. So I did finish this already last year. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. No plot, all vibes. That's me. That's this book. It's basically just the setup for the things to come, and I'm pretty excited about this new world that we have got ourselves into. Then I had to mention The Highwaymen, written by Kerrigan Byrne. This is the first book of the Victorian Rebels series, and this is the very, very first historical romance novel that I decided to give a chance. Like I mentioned already in this video, I think it was me DNFing House of Sky and Breath that spurned me to look at actual romance writers, because I couldn't take it anymore of subpar romance, subpar steam, subpar plot devices being woven through all of that for 800 pages, that I was like, I should really look at people who have made it their career to write about romance. That's where Kerrigan Byrne came in, and I loved every single second of it. Here we have, it's a childhood best friends to lovers romance, and it's adorable. Like, the first couple of scenes are just like melt your heart. We meet this young woman named Farah, and as a child she had this great sweeping romance, and she ends up getting split apart from her great love. That took place in the Highlands. They were both orphans, and she has had to work her own way up in the world. And so at the start of this book, as an adult, we find Farah working in Scotland Yard as like an assistant in the detective department. There is a notorious crime boss that this case ends up like leading her to him. And the story kind of takes off from there. It's so great. Oh, it was so good. I'm so happy this was my very first historical romance, because I need a little danger. I need a little intrigue in my life. And so I wanted to start with a historical that had some of that, and it wasn't just kind of like happy-go-lucky vibes. And now that I've like dipped my toes more into historical romance, I think I can handle some happy-go-lucky vibes, but I really wanted just a little bit of darkness in my romance novel, so that's why I ended up picking up this one. It was really great. 5 out of 5 stars. And then we have come to the end of an era, and it wouldn't be a yearly wrap-up video of mine without bringing up Robin Hobb. So last year I finished the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, thereby finishing The Realm of the Elderlings. And so the first book was Fool's Assassin. The second book was Fool's Quest, and the third book was Assassin's Fate. I think I have to do like a separate video on Robin Hobb the way that I just did a separate video on Stephen King, so if you want to see that, let me know in the comment section below. But for those of you who might be newer to my channel, because maybe you saw my romance videos and now you're new to me, but Robin Hobb is my favorite author of all time. And this book series is my favorite book series of all time. There's never going to be one that tops it, and it was a 16-book series. It took me 4 years to read. Each of the books packs like a huge emotional punch that like, it's literally not a series that you can binge one after the other. I mean, you could, but like, do you like pain? Because that's what you would be feeling after every single novel. The way we wrap up Fitz Chivalry Farseer's story in this last installment, it was like, for me, it was the perfect ending to his story. It wasn't outwardly obvious what his ending would be. And then once I figured out what was gonna happen, I wept for like the last 200 pages straight. It was a book series that I finished like in the middle of the night. I told my husband, sorry, the light's gonna be on all night because I'm finishing this book tonight. One of those kinds of situations. And as soon as I finished, like, I wept, I cried. I just couldn't even handle it, because it was like the whole culmination of 4 years worth of following the same character, and plus the ending that Robin Hobb wrote for all of the characters. It was a lot. It was a lot to handle, and I might still be like too much in my feelings to like definitively rank them right now. Of course, for the Catch-Up Book Club, this was the book series that we were reading together, so there is the live show and our reactions once we finished the series, so if you want to see that, I can definitely link that below. Some things didn't play out exactly as I wanted them to. But like I said, the way that Robin Hobb wrote each of these characters into this last installment, I thought was just the best possible ending. Now, by the time we get to the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, I'll just give you a brief rundown. Fitz Chivalry Farseer, who is the character that we've been following for 13 books prior to this, is now an older man in his 60s, and his life has taken quite a turn when he hasn't heard from his best childhood friend, the Fool, in some time. And he is living the life of a country squire, retired and happy with the love of his life, but that can never happen for him, because then a messenger comes, and it's basically like a cryptid message that the Fool is not doing well. And so it makes Fitz Chivalry need to take action, need to get off of his butt as a country squire, and have one last adventure. And it was so good. And I can't believe, like, unless I pick up her next year, or her new, unless I pick up the Soldier's Son trilogy, which is not related to the Realm of the Elderlings, or I still haven't read the Inheritance, which is like a collection of short stories. Unless I read those, I have no Robin Hobb books planned for the year. Isn't that crazy? Isn't that wild? That might be the first time since I've started a BookTube channel, since I came on BookTube, because I read the very, very first trilogy before I even got on BookTube. I read Assassin's Apprentice before I even made a BookTube channel, and I was like deep in my early feels of the Realm of the Elderlings, that I have reviews of, you know, the Live Ship Traders trilogy. I have the Tawny Man trilogy. I have the Rainwild Chronicles. I should probably do a wrap-up of Fitz and the Fool, but like I literally don't know how I could get through that. So it's been a wild ride. If you've been along with me for that journey, thank you so much for being a part of it. And it'll be very interesting to see who reigns supreme after Robin Hobb. It's going to be very, very hard to beat. I am reading Stormlight Archive, so maybe that'll be the one. I mean, I love the Stormlight Archive, but it's great. Okay, this is probably going to be a long video. Maybe I should have split it all up because it just ended up being too much to talk about? I don't know. I don't think I'm going to split them up, so thank you so much if you ended up making it to this part in the video. This is, once again, I've been filming for a long time. So thank you again for joining me, listening about just kind of the summary of 2022 and the books that I did really enjoy out of just a not very great reading year for me. Follow me on my social media if you'd like. I'm on Twitter and Instagram. It's at whatcassread, the same as this channel, so it should be super easy for you to find. And then, of course, you know how these videos end. I'll talk to you later. Bye.